All right, family, what's the vibes? How you guys doing? Yeah, so this is a video I promised, I think on Friday, right? And I've been so busy, so busy. But again, I have to get to this. How you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing fine. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. Yes, we have the outlook, on Monday, but I wanted to just touch on a few things, right? If you get to watch this video, the outlook is going to be much more easier to understand. You kind of like get the full picture. All right, so getting into it, right? The first thing I would say is if you have been going through hard times with your trading recently, it is perfectly okay. And I know that doesn't sound doesn't sound thrilling, especially if you've been taking losses or you've been blowing funded accounts or whatever, right? But what I'm saying is it's not been the easiest time to trade. It's been, crazy. And it's majorly because there are things that are happening right now that are more than our control. And I'll talk a little bit about that, right? We're seeing, confusion with geopolitics and headlines. We're having these headlines that should, preach some type of market understanding to us, but those things are not, really as they're supposed to be. There is a ceasefire, this particular moment, 3 hours later, no more ceasefire. There's an expand, and I've talked about this a little bit. When we have this escalation continue, when Iran is still saying no, and US is saying, we'll bomb or anything that just seems like an escalation, what is going to happen is few things you need to watch for. The inflation. The inflation is caused by oil. Inflation is that we start to have oil prices, or we start to have prices get expensive. You probably would have, noticed that even here in Nigeria, that the fuel, right, the fuel thing or the fuel prices at the pump are expensive. Things become expensive when we have inflation, and that is due to oil being less, or oil being in demand. Yes, right. So the supply is skewed because of the Strait of Hormuz being closed. The Strait of Hormuz controls about 20% of the global oil that passes, right? So if that place is closed, we know that to get oil is going to be difficult, right? Then now people would demand for oil, and that would make oil prices go up. Just think about it. If you have oil and there's a whole lot of people trying to buy from you, what will happen? You have to increase the price so that you can be able to sort that demand, right? And that is what the inflation right now is, because there are different stories to inflation, but this particular inflation that we're dealing with, right, is based on oil pricing. And that's why you'd see me go back and back to oil and check out oil, because if oil prices stay elevated, something is going to happen. Increase of inflation. Increase in inflation means that the US or the Fed, they are less likely to cut rates. So I'm going to move through those charts so that I can give you an understanding. Like I said, when it comes to fundamental analysis, it can be a little bit, um, um, not, it can be a little bit complex to understand, but, if you stay with me, watch the videos over and over, you start to get the story, right? So this is what is happening here, right? We saw, in February 8th, we had the news release start. Before that, we already saw, oil already rising after, going lower for years now, 2023 up until 2025, we've seen oil prices go lower. But before, the escalation, before US bombed Iran, what we saw was what? What we saw that was that, we started to see oil prices go higher. Now, when the escalation news came in, what happened? Oil prices ran higher. Again, the Strait of Hormuz was closed, meaning that the demand for oil became higher, and then that would make what? Oil prices go higher. If oil prices go higher again, like I said, inflation would come into the picture. Right. Nobody likes inflation because, things on the counter, your groceries, your fuel, because everything is being moved by transport. And this is where oil comes in. That's why the oil chart is important. So if we keep seeing the oil prices go higher, right, that tells us that inflation is still stepping in place. And what will happen? What will happen in that moment? Or what is happening in that moment? It means that if inflation is in place, the Feds would be less interested to cut rates. They'll be less interested to cut rates. If the Feds do not cut rates, very simple, what's happening is we're going to see increase in dollar. think about the rates as the rates is, or not even think about it. What the rates currently are, or what the rates are, is the profit on whatever bonds that you buy. So if you invest in the US treasuries, right, you invest in, a 10-year or 30-year bond, what will happen is you have an amount that you get as interest, your profits basically. Now, that profit, if that profit keeps going higher or stays high, right, you would leave your money in there. And what money are we talking about? The US dollar. So if they cut rates, what will happen, right? Investors that are already profitable, on the long run, maybe they've been investing for a while, they will want to sell out that store, or they want to sell out those treasuries because the rates are no longer interesting, right? If you invested, especially if you invested when the price was high and it starts going lower, what will happen to your investments? They start getting, cut short, right? It's like you're investing in Bitcoin at 124K and price drops to 70K. What will happen? You lose money, right? So this is exactly what is happening, right? So if Feds cut rates, what will happen? Then the dollar would go lower. If Feds keep rates or increase rates, what will happen? Then the dollar will go higher. So very simple way to understand this is, if inflation is happening, oil goes higher, DXY goes higher, right? Because Feds can't cut rates, right? And oil goes higher, DXY goes higher, the interest rates, right, also goes higher. So you see oil go higher, DXY go higher. So you see that's the story that we've been maintaining until March 27, going into March 31st, when the US said, you know what, we have ceased the war, or Trump said, we have actually, the war has actually come to an end, and all of that story. So the moment we hear that, it means that, okay, if the war has come to an end, then the Strait of Hormuz would be open, things are going to become fine and it's normal. So we don't need inflation again. So inflation is no longer there. What will happen? We will see the yield go lower. And the market is reacting. Just to give you an understanding, it's not like the Feds have cut any rates, or the market is really just following, paying attention to, oh, if this happens, this is how the market reacts. So what will happen? Investors, individuals would play that side of how the market reacts to these situations based on old time and past understanding. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's why when you hear the news come out and it's like, oh, we have closed, or there's ceasefire, as Trump would say, he has done that 3 weeks in a row now. There's ceasefire. Just at saying the news, we would see the market already start to react to that. Right, we've even seen that, aside, and this is even aside of the other thing that is happening, which is insider trading, right? We are seeing massive moves, right? Even just right at the release of the, or just right at the, we're seeing massive news just right at the headline, right? And these moves are not even or these headlines are not headlines that are sure. What do I mean? It says, oh, okay, there is ceasefire now, right? And 3 hours or the next day, Iran comes to say, no, that's a lie, there was no ceasefire. So it's kind of like, okay, why did you then say there is a ceasefire? And it's not just why, we will see the market do these big jumps and then reverse. And that's why I said it's been a very hard time to be trading the markets. But this is how things actually go. So what am I trying to explain to you? I'm explaining the story again, right? If inflation, right, is no longer in the picture because, oh, okay, things are settling up, we would see the US, or you would see the yield, that's where I am here, the government yield, we'll see the yield go lower, and we'll see dollar do what also? We'll see dollar go lower. A very simple way to think about this is dollar chases yield. Right? And I told you the story. The story is, if the yield gets cut, right? If there's an information that the Feds are likely to cut rates, what will happen to the US dollar? It weakens, right? So it goes lower, basically. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? So that's the story. You see that, from that 27th to 31st of March, we started to see the dollar go lower. We started to see US oil go lower, right? Because the story has changed. And I've talked about this. I said, that story that we had from the beginning of the year up until now, up until ending of March, right, is slowly beginning to fade away. There are other things we can think about, with this happening, which is quarterly shifts. Every 3 months, or every quarter, which is every 3 months, the market actually shifts directions. This is just, something that is pertaining to the market. But the other thing that we're seeing that is quite confusing is, like I said, and I've started to explain a little bit of that. We're seeing that, as with the news release, we can't really understand what is happening. And that's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to look at the news release and say, you know what, I know what is happening now. The ceasefire is over. Let me go and buy gold. Let me go and buy the stock indices. Let me go and, buy the foreign currencies, because those things will go higher when inflation is going lower, when, the yield is dropping. They would go higher, right? And the dollar, right, will go lower. As you know, right? If the dollar goes lower, risk assets would go higher. If the dollar goes higher, risk assets will go lower. So as you can see, right, I don't want you to pay attention and say, you know what, because of what this is happening, because look at that. We've seen even up until Friday, right, we saw that Trump came out to say what? We saw that Trump came out to say that the Strait of Hormuz is now opened. Did you see that on Friday? Right? We saw that Trump said at this particular time, right? 8 a.m., 1 o'clock our time, right? Trump came out and put out, an unintended news, unplanned news that, the Strait of Hormuz is now opened, right? And at that news release, we saw what? We saw the market, like I said, when there's de-escalation, meaning that, things are getting better, the dollar will weaken based on what? The yield will go lower, oil will go lower, right? So if we go to oil, this is that same time when the news came out, oil goes lower, the yield also does what? Go lower, right? Based on the idea or on the news release of the escalation. So as you can see the direct representations of the things I've just said, right? You can just see it, just happening here, right? The yield goes lower, oil goes lower, DXY goes lower. And what will go higher? We would see gold go higher. We will see the stock markets go higher, right? So we'll see what gold, 8 a.m., right, go higher, expand to buy side, very, very expansive move. If you're in here, you make a lot of money, right? Gold expand higher. The indices market, which has been soaring, extreme runs to the buy side we've seen with this thing. And I don't really talk about this, but this is a very important factor. It's like this is telling you about what the companies, the economy value is doing. So if we're having less war and less uncertainty, this is going to thrive. Now it's thriving in such a way that is skeptical. In my view, I'm seeing this as insider trading 100%, because even before the news comes in, we see this thing just expanding. And look at how it's expanding. It's not even following the algorithmic way that we understand, where we would see price return back into some level of discount and retrace. It's just putting in buy candles, expansive ones, right? So if I were you, I would be cautious here. I won't just buy this blindly, right? Even though if you bought this as it was going, you probably have made a whole lot of money. But to me, this is still blind. This is not how the market puts in positions. Not like it can't happen, because we're in a market that is being controlled by factors that you don't even understand. Like I say every time, if you are Trump's son or very close to his seat, you would hear informations before they drop out. And all you need to do is have a trader friend that you talk to and give him some of those information, and he can then load the market based on that. What do you think will happen? When the news come in, the market will react there, but some people are already early buyers, and you see these gaps, big gaps that are happening. That's insider trading, and it's illegal, but it happens. It happens. Now, what you might say is, oh, this is unfair, this is manipulation. Well, all I know about this, right, and everything in my life as I think about is, if you ever start to point the hand and point fingers, raise your fist to heaven and blame God, all that will happen is you don't have zero power. You lose your power the moment you don't take responsibility, right? So the moment something is happening and you want to blame it on somebody else, then just agree that you've lost in that game. What am I saying? If you think that, oh, the market is being manipulated, then you would never have the mindset that wins. The mindset that wins cannot be the same one that thinks that it doesn't have power to control. Do you get? So even though I can see this, one of the things I would do is I'm not going to try to trade, XSD indices market, because I just think this is just too extended, right? If you look at NAS, crazy. crazy moves happening, right? And they fall in the camp of the risk assets. Gold will go higher, the currencies will go higher. Yeah, the currencies will go higher, like the foreign currencies, EU, GU, they would go higher. Oil will go lower, DXY will go lower, yield will go lower. You get the story, right? So that is what has happened, right? But just right as that news came out, right, we saw, and I think I need to show you this, right? We saw just I think Friday night, I think it was just 3 hours, right? Just after the news, right? Look at what happens. Look at what happens here. Iran says what? Iran says Strait of Hormuz is closed until the US blockade lifts. Until the US blockade lifts as US ship report attacks. So, you know, Trump says in the afternoon that, you know what, we have closed this thing down, or we have opened up the Strait of Hormuz. Oil is now going to be distributed freely. And Iran, where the strait is telling you that, boy, that is closed. Maybe it was open so a few hours ago, but escalation is still happening right now. Now, there's so many things this is bringing, and I don't want to turn this into a full fundamental class, but this is bringing so much uncertainty, and you as a trader might be wondering, how do I do this, right? And the first thing is, don't put too much pressure on what the news says, because it changes anytime. This exact same thing I'm showing you, where, oh, this is the story of de-escalation. It has stopped, the war is settled, and then hours later we see that no, the war is not settled. In fact, it's getting worse. This is the third time it's happening, and it's happening the same way. Friday afternoon, Trump says everything is settled. Saturday, Iran comes to say everything is not settled. Monday, Trump says everything is settled again. And it's been going like that for the past 3 weeks. So now Iran says, oh, blah, 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 blah. What do you think will happen? Again, if escalation happens, right, what will happen? It would mean that risk assets will do what? Fall. This guy has been staying very strong. The stock market has been staying very strong. Proves my idea and theory about, the proves my idea and theory about what I said illegally is happening, right? But also this happened on Saturday, right? Friday going into Saturday, right? Yeah, Saturday was actually when Iran talked about the news. So we're going to see what happens on the weekend. I'm predicting that we would see a crash based on what we already have escalation news. Again, this guy has been putting up, very strong movements. I don't know so much about what's happening. But what have I been doing with this news? That's one of the things that is important. One of the things I have noticed as repetition, which is what you develop as a trader. You start to understand patterns and then use those patterns to treat future occurrences. Is that there's a scenario that is called tackle. Trump's always chickens out. What it means is, when Trump says something, well, it's not so much to be trusted. In fact, the Iran government, and I think I posted some screenshots to the inner circle there, right? The Iran government has talked about, Trump saying, the Iran government has talked about, Trump saying to traders that, you know what, guys, if this guy says this, just do the other side of it. What is this? What does that mean? If he says there's escalation, then play the side of de-escalation. So just like what happened on Friday, right? Look at gold, right? You'd see me sell gold on Friday, and that's where I'm getting to. I've said a whole lot of story, and maybe you like that, maybe you don't like that. Let me know in the comment section if you like, all of these things that I'm talking about, or if I should just keep it plain to, market understanding and all of that. But look at this. The moment, as I showed you, right, at 8 a.m. EST, Trump talks about, oh, you know what, the Strait of Hormuz is opened. What do you think happened? The market spiked higher. But right after that spike, at the back of that spike, or at the back of that spike, what happened? Boom, the market turned all the way. So you can see that the news did not follow through to what it's supposed to do, right? What is supposed to happen if there is, de-escalation? It means, oh, continuous buys. But it did not even last an hour. After the run higher here, price started to go lower, right? So it's like sell the good news, buy the bad news. It's exactly how the market has worked. It's the same idea. We buying discount, selling premium. It's the same idea. So the moment I saw this, put up a high, right, and expanded to take out, intra-week highs here, right? One, that's technically correct that we've gotten into a short-term premium, and I just waited for a lower high to form, and then I was engaging the sales on gold, which really, really, came in good, putting me at a break even for the week because again, it's been a very stressful week. I came into the week taking a loss on NTD, a very big loss, and all of the wins I had was used to cover up that, which I'm still very excited about because it could have gone worse, right? But look at this, right? We're seeing, gold already pricing in those sales even before what happened on Saturday happened. Now, on Saturday, we've already heard the news that what? The escalation continues. Now, this is not new, right? It's a very, very clear thing that, or it's something that we can already expect that when the market opens, we can see a gap down, right? And if you listen to my videos last week, I talked about the same things. A gap down happens, right? And what would actually keep follow through to the downside will be if we keep hearing escalation news. If we keep hearing that, oh, yes, it's not still open and that continues, because this is exactly what happened here. This is exactly what happened on Friday last week, right? We heard that what? We heard that US is keeping a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, meaning bad. The Strait of Hormuz is not open. That was last week, Saturday, actually. And I talked about it. I said, if you look at BTC, which is a risk asset that is open in the weekend, already started to go lower, giving the indication that this is how the markets will react to this news. Some of you might be wondering, why do you check a lot of peers? It's because if you really understand the market, everything is interconnected. Everything is contingent on something. And if you listen to me well enough, you start to get the understanding of this and improve how you read markets, right? And how you can make decisions. Because it's not just decisions for trading, it's decisions for your life. But we'll get it, right? We see the market on Friday, boom, or on Saturday Saturday was when the news, came in, but obviously the markets will not be opened on Saturday. So what happened, right? Trump talks, and when Trump talks, that's where the problem is. When Trump talks, he says, we are blocking the Strait of Hormuz, right? On Saturday, he said that. So coming in on Monday, boom, we saw this. I was victim to this because I wanted to see sales happen here, even though I did not sell. But I was telling my guys that, I think this is just going to continue lower. But again, the news comes in, but what was the direction? Buy side, right? And this directional bias, buy side for gold continued all week. And you saw, GU expand, we saw EU expand, and all of those expansions in there all drop. You get the story, right? So that's exactly what we're expecting again. That's exactly what I want to see again. That now we have the same escalation story, but now by Iran, right? So are we going to see continuation to sell side? Well, we will see, right? And how I'm going to see that is if we have the gap down and we continue to see follow through, that would mean we still have escalation, and that would mean me expecting more sell side. It's the story that I would like to see, but I'm really, 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 really cautious, and this might not be so interesting for you to hear. I'm really, really on the neutral side on how price plays, and I'm going to be taking intraday stabs because, right, there's no true direction to what is really happening. Nobody really knows what is really, really happening. This is what I know, and I can tell you, if we keep seeing the yield go lower, then the dollar is going to react badly to that. And the dollar is going to chase yield, and the dollar is going to go lower too. So, and these are the levels I'm watching technically for that, because I've been speaking fundamentally. I'm watching this OB, as I've told you guys. Right, if we lose this OB, then maybe I'm now on with the story that we can actually see a debt to the dollar, and we can see risk assets, gold. If the yield goes down, the yield is very, very connected to gold, and you might not really understand why, but I'm going to show you now. I'm going to show you now. Right. So every time the yield, right, when we see the yield go lower, let's look at it here. Will I be able to show you this here? Let me see if I can show you on the daily time frame. November 2021. All right, so let me just explain this. This is going to be very, very long if I do that. But know this, right? If the yield is going lower, it means rates. Think about rates when the yield is going lower. So when the yield is going lower, we're talking about cuts in interest rates. The gold likes that story, right? Cutting interest rates means that, oh, we are having problems with inflation and we need to cut rates. We need to print more money to kind of assist the economy, right? Bad economy, right, is what makes Fed's cut rates. That story is good for gold because investors will take their, money from a losing asset, which would be the USD, and then put it in a risk asset or a safe haven, which will be gold, right? So now, if gold or if this guy keeps going lower, if oil keeps going lower, then yes, we can see continuation of downside to the dollar, right? But all of these asset classes at critical levels, and at this point we have an escalation. So going to my head, what am I thinking about? We bounce off of here for buy side and continue this buy side here, right? We're already in that down close candle. We bounce off of here. We see oil, right? Oil is a very, very important factor, right? I think that it's lost that momentum higher. Like I can see, this low I was really looking at, but price, all of the buys that started in here has been used for only manipulation to go lower, right? So, but oil dropped at one point on Friday. Remember when the news that the Strait of Hormuz is now opened, oil dropped 13%. Oil dropped 13%. But see, just right after that drop, oil has put up 6% back. These are things that I was looking at. Oil has put up 6% back. So is that manipulation to distribution? Well, we're gonna see. We're gonna see how we open today, and that's gonna give us a better picture, right? If we see oil keep rising, then DXY, which is also at a critical level now, could see its rise. DXY also had the same idea, right? DXY also, right at the news, right, dropped lower. Let me show you on the time frame that you can see that. Right at the news, dropped lower. But this seems to me like a manipulation to distribution play. Consolidation drops at the news release into a high time frame level, which is a bullish order block on the weekly time frame, a bullish breaker on the daily time frame, bullish breaker on the daily time frame, bullish order block on the daily time frame, weekly bullish order block, right? Technically, this looks about right for buy side on the dollar. So now, these are the things I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be watching the news release for services PMI, for inflation numbers. Inflation numbers came in weak on the last one. On the last inflation, we had 4% inflation, which is actually still high, but it was lower than expected. Cooling inflation means the story that the escalation, right, is dying out. It means that oil is going lower, right? Well, again, cool inflation just means DXY lower, the foreign assets higher. Just to make it simple. I know I'm saying it over and over again, but that's how you're going to get it. And like I said, these things are really, really easy. With what I've said, you can really just pick up your ChatGPT, pause the video and ask, oh, okay, inflation cooling does what to gold, DXY, the stock market. It's going to give you a breakdown, right? And that breakdown will help you understand these things that I'm saying, much more properly. So, but what I'm seeing in here is technically we are at a discount level that has a key level, which is a bullish order block, we understand, with a fair value gap inside of there. That is, good enough to start to see buy side. If we start to move lower inside of here, we're going to see again, right? That's that idea. We have, up close candle in here that's been disrespected, right? It's supposed to be a bearish order block, but when disrespected becomes what? A bullish breaker. But seeing a bullish order block inside of here, very, very beautiful levels that we have here that is making me keep on with this buy. So on Friday before the market opened, I took out some positions on my gold sales, but I left something in. Right, like I said, I'm going to be taking stabs as the market goes because I really don't know, all that is going to happen, right? But this is the side I've been staying on, and I'm still staying on this side. I think on Thursday or Wednesday, I tried to buy gold and I got stopped. I got stopped out, right? So again, it was going to be an intraday buy, but I'm like, okay, yeah, this doesn't work out. I'm really just going to stay until something clear happens. So if you or anybody is telling you that, oh, they know exactly what the market is doing, they are just lying to you. Nobody knows Nobody knows how things are going to play out. Although, even it's not even although, but if you've been paying attention to the markets, you would see that the dynamic has been very, 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 very creepy. Like, oh, this news comes out saying something is happening, another news comes out saying it's not happening. And there's a big, big story behind this, right? That we can talk about later, maybe tomorrow. I kind of explain more of these things. But this is where I stand. This is where I want you to stand, right? And some other things that are interesting that I need to feed you up on is I've been talking about stocks lately, and oh yeah, I've told you guys what I'm going to do, how I'm going to be looking at this. I want you guys, everyone watching this right now, to not just have trading and just think trading. I believe that you become a better trader when you become a better planner, when you become, the type of person that thinks long term, the kind of person that can think ahead, right? And that person is saying, you know what, if I get my money right now, what do I do with it? It's not just getting the money, but what would make you get the money and want to get more of it is when the money already has use. When money is not used, it develops wings and flies away. So I've been talking about the stock market and I've been giving a whole lot of information. I talked about Microsoft as one of the steps that I'm going to be taking, right? And if anybody invested, in that, you would have made over 14% right now. Let me see if I can show you that. Indices, stocks, MSFT. Let's just do this. So Microsoft, right? Daily time frame. Now, the reason why I'm looking at this particular market is if you just look at the stock markets, the software, the tech stock, all of those markets are extremely high, as I've showed you, right? Even up until date, 1.4%. That was Friday's move, right? On this asset class. So what will happen? There are individual assets that make up the SP 500, right? We have Tesla, we have Microsoft, we have Google, we have Meta, right? And these stocks have been hit hard, right? Based on all of the, war stories, right? The stock market is going lower. The individual names obviously will be going lower, right? But when the market is going lower, it's not when you panic. It's exactly when you look for opportunities to buy. So I gave out this particular stock. I gave out this particular outlook that we're going to start to see, buying from here, and you can engage right there, right? Just technically, you can see this is just the discount part of a range. I love to buy every single time when prices are at this level because very quickly you can know when you're wrong and you have a good risk to reward. Let me show you the trade on the community channel. And this part of the channel is actually free, right? You get more information obviously when you are in the inner circle. I've not really had so much time to be on the team chat as much, and I said that even before the inner circle comes in. So if you're really, really serious about growth, you should be signed into the inner circle. It's less than $55, and I feel like if you're really at that point where you're trying to grow your account, then you should be there. But if not, you can be on the other parts of the channel where value is still massively produced, right? So this is Stock Planet, right, where I say everything about stocks. I talk about the things I'm looking to buy, the things I'm watching out for, the things you should invest your money on, and all of that. So this was it, right? Look at where price was. Look at where price was. Let me show you this. This is interesting. Look at where price was on what day was that? April 14th. Price was just down here when I talked about this, right? The US stock market has been recovering, and I'm looking to buy some names that was hit bad, during the crash, and Microsoft is one on my list, right? $382 or $389 was the stock amount, and prices right now are over. This was updated, I think, in the weekend, 420. But if we go back to look at it, we'll see that prices are now at $422, $423. We're going to check that out, which is over 14% in increase, right? $422 we got to. We are $422.79 right now. If you imagine this goes all the way here, right? Because this is the least part of movement here is here, right? So price comes back into this equal highs. That's going to be $554, and that would be how many percent in movement from where we were buying? That would be 49, 49 or 48, 49%. Just think about it. You have a 1 million naira and you put it in the stock, and without doing anything, you made 500K. That's smart. That's passive income. So when you start thinking about the money you want to make as a trader, you can then start to put that into things like this that make you passive income based on the knowledge, based on the information. And that's why if you're not with the right community, if you're not moving alongside with what is moving, you don't get the information that actually gets you paid. Right. Another thing I'm working on, and I've also shared openly, is the Nigerian stock market. Right. I'm thinking about so many things on a deeper level. Right. The conditions for the US market right now is really, really tight. Right. It's tight. Like all of their options, right, leads to a weaker dollar in some sense. So having the dollar is not the best of ideas. Some years back, that was, the good thing to do. Have dollars, and then you can make more money because the naira is weak. But now we are seeing, the naira actually, the Nigerian stocks, actually taking the bold move of saying, you know what, I'm going to share part of the company with you, right? I'm going to give you dividends. Like MTN is going to pay you dividends, right? And they're saying out of our profits, you can be shareholders and then make money. So I'm building a tool that, would actually help you, see, instead of going and asking everybody, what should I buy? What should I not buy? This tool is going to answer that, right? And, I'm going to put out, a form. If you want to see this, if you want to test it out, right, I'm going to send it to you so that you can actually test it out and see how it is. It's like it gives you a breakdown of, what to buy, what not to buy, and all of that, right? I want you to watch this space because I'm going to be talking about this more and more. But again, like I said, the main goal of this, right, this channel that we have here, this Discord, is to be able to grow you to a fully mature investor, to actually put you in that place where you know what to do with money, right? Engaging in the forex market makes you money, but you need to know what to do in the money. And that's why we also have, the real estate camp here also. So, you start to think about how to have real assets that can actually generate money for you. And you might think real estate is, oh, I need to wait 10 years before you sell and make money. Well, you have the wrong idea. You can have properties right now that can start making you money as soon as next month. Yes, you can. Right, and Westside Holdings is actually helping us with all of that. He's on the channel. He's one of the educators in the inner circle. And good stuff that we're bringing in here. But if you don't tap in, you're just going to watch on the sideline. You're just going to watch on the sideline. All right, guys, I know I've said a whole lot of things, but I hope you got value from this call. It's a bit long, but I wanted to just share my own thoughts and ideas about what is going on, how I'm looking at the market. And again, this is not financial advice. This is not you saying, oh, look, oh, May said this, let me go and do that, right? No, 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 no. This is just me sharing my thoughts and ideas about what I want to do with price and my money. And yeah, all right, guys, I'm going to see you tomorrow by 11 a.m. Like, subscribe, and just make this channel bigger than it is, right? I'm going to be putting out more videos in here, but I also need your support to know how things are working and how we can push this to as many people as possible. Great things are inbound, and I would see you guys in the next one. Bless up, YouTube family.